The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and I'm delighted to say this particular episode is the return of the Mando Report. Like the funky, relaxed guitar riff version of the Mandalorian theme. That was awesome.
Yeah. Soft strings.
Soft strings. We saw some of that. I can't wait to talk about some of the music. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and the person making wonderful mouth music is Ken Napzok. Ken, are you excited to get back into the world of the Mandalorian?
More than I think I even anticipated. Yeah, the friends are back. The gang's back together, sort of, kind of, fractured, but they're here.
The gang's all here, but not together at all, really. One of the big ideas of this episode. Yeah, I was really excited for the new episode. I'm excited for the new storytelling, but in some ways I'm just excited for the mood, right? There's a specific kind of storytelling of this Mandoverse of Din and Grogu together, and it was really great to just be back in that world, back in that mood.
It really was. I think we'll get into some of the details of it there. But we're in this wonderful time to be a Star Wars fan, which we have been, I think, for, all of our lives, but 2015 on. It's just been a pirate's bounty, Gorian shard bounty of Star Wars. And it was just a fun reminder to sit down and you get to sit down and enjoy something new.
Exactly. We are going to dive deep into it. Oh, we do want to do a quick plug because we know these review discussion episodes are ones where we get a lot of ears. So we want to let people know that we are revitalizing our Patreon. If you're interested, you can go to patreon.com/Force Center. We have a lot of different rewards, but in particular, we are going to be doing a special series of other Center episodes. We're going to be discussing Indiana Jones. It's a series of episodes we're calling Indiana Jones in the Perilous Podcasts. And we're going to be building up to the new Indiana Jones movie, Dial of Destiny. And those episodes will initially be exclusive to Patreon. After the movie comes out, they'll be available to the public. But if you'd like to join us for our Indiana Jones journey, where we'll analyze it, much like we analyze Star Wars, go check out our Patreon and see if that's something that you want to be a part of. All right. Plug done. Back to the Mando. We are discussing here today Chapter 17, entitled The Apostate. It is written by Jon Favreau and directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Rick Famuyiwa, now one of the executive producers, and just great to see him behind the camera for this first episode of the third season. About 33 minutes of actual storytelling. Those credits for the international versions of all the Disney Plus shows, I'm so glad they're there, but they are a little bit long. So you're down to about 33 minutes of actual storytelling. Let's just start there. How did you feel about the length? Did you look at the length first? Are you concerned about length and The Mandalorian?
No, I'm not. But it is always kind of fun. The Mandalorian tends to run shorter than you think and maybe even want, right? So I did not look at it, but I had some prop bets placed with some friends about the over under, and I took 27 minutes, including credits, and I lost a little bit more, and happy with that there.
You got even more Mando than you expected. That is great. We like to talk about our experience viewing it, literally physically viewing it. We love diving deep, but we also want to always approach it as fans. So did you do any kind of special prep? Did you stay up until midnight and have the full midnight experience? What did you do?
Been working late a lot recently, so I just kind of was ready to be up. But yeah, I slowed down, played some Fortnite, and drank some beer. That's what I did. It was like a college Friday night, which really I didn't even do that in college. So it was kind of fun. I had the This Is the Way IPA, did a YouTube short on our YouTube channel about it. I discovered it in my local 7-Eleven. Clearly not licensed based on the artwork on the can, but it was a lot of fun to just pop open a This Is the Way IPA and drink and watch Mando.
I really enjoyed your short. I enjoyed seeing the can and seeing that Mando does almost look like he's some kind of cat. So I feel like you maybe drank /fiction that you actually took.
Yeah.
Some strange Mando is both an armored person and maybe a furry, and you took that and you drank it into your body.
I said Centurion in the video only because I couldn't comprehend what I was truly seeing. But cat combo, that's the spirit of it. What I love is, like, I thought, well, they did that artwork, and check out the short again for reference. I thought, oh, maybe they did that to get away with not having the license, but the Grogu's spot on. There's nothing they're hiding about that there. So.
Yeah, maybe it's Mando teaching Grogu about the Mandalorian version of Halloween, and he has just, put on some cat ears and painted whispers. This is the way on.
Yeah, this is the way, meow.
On All Ancestors' Eve, this is the way. That's great. And so did you enjoy the Midnight Experience? Was it good to be back to that? Did it give you any sort of sense of community to be watching it with a lot of other people who were staying up?
Yeah, no, it is fun. I got some texts from people up late on the East Coast to revel in the fun and full, as we always say, full disclosure, we had access to the screeners and for the first 2 episodes and hand to Mandalore. I didn't watch them. Had a slight temptation of midnight's late, but I was already up, and it's just fun. I haven't watched episode 2. I'm not going to because I do enjoy it. There's something about it. It's like sitting down for a live show. Like you don't have to hear about the play later. Or see it before you could share the joy. You're just watching it with everyone. And I do enjoy that. And I've missed that with Bad Batch. We haven't done that for Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a point to do it for this one. It was fun.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the Midnight Experience. The ritual that I've set up of, I check social media, see other people being excited about it. Phil Shostak in particular always has All Wings report in, which is great. I pour myself a whiskey and I pick out action figure friends to pose with the whiskey and take a picture of for social media. And I have a bounty of choices for this show, for Mandalorian and Grogu. I went with my retro Mandalorian and retro Grogu, the child action figures, because I do just love that this show is charting a new path. It is literally in a more unexplored timeline of canon. It is creating new ideas, new characters, new canon. But it is still invested in that young love and wonder about what Star Wars is, and those retro action figures really capture that spirit for me.
Yeah, that's great. I wish I had room on my shelves.
We'll make room. Yeah. We'll go to Mandalore and we'll make room somehow. But yeah, it was really great to get back to not only the show, but that community excitement about Mando. We'll probably talk about it a little bit. There was some crankiness, being generous on the internet about the timeline of the show, and some of that got into my soul. So sitting down for the Midnight Experience, seeing other people excited and seeing their pictures of what toys they brought out and what drinks they brought out, it really got me back on the right track. So the social experience really helped me sit back and enjoy this episode.
Great way to look at it. Yeah, happy to dive into some of that timeline, hoopla and fervor later if we need to, if it comes up. But yeah, it got me exhausted already, and it put me in a weird spot. That's why I think I was going to wait till midnight and feel the joy, because I literally was like, this episode has even dropped, and I'm exhausted already with this kind of stuff.
Well,
long take on it for me,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it might come up naturally because I think it's a part of what I reacted to in the episode was the clear passage of time. But with that segue, let's get into that. What was your overall reaction? How did this episode affect you? Did you love it, like it, struggle with it? Where'd you go?
I really enjoyed it. And let's just pretend I was on the red carpet and I did a vague tweet after. This is a fun romp. And I mean that. It was a very fun romp. And as much as we heard about this, this is going to be an epic season, which I'm sure this will be an epic season of Mandalorian. I enjoy that it's still very much the show we've come to love, right? It knows what it is. It knows what it wants to do. And it knows how it presents it. And it was all that. It just was, I was like, oh yeah, this is a Mandalorian episode. And I love that. And I'm glad we're in this era of so many options of Star Wars programming. It's key to me. I had a chance to kind of reflect going back to 2019 when the show dropped, and Mandalorian's great and I love it. And all that is true. But I think some of the moments don't connect with me as much as it does for other people. Just some of the choices or the presentation. Sometimes I have, okay. But now I don't, 2019, I put too much pressure on the show. and might have been a little bit like, I don't think that's Pedro Pascal walking there. I don't know about this. And now I don't need to get hung up on it because, all right, if I want a serious presentation, I got Andor. If I want a big sweeping emotional stuff that like the Kenobi or Bad Batch, it's all there. And this is that buffet you and I celebrate a lot. So this time I was able, once it started, I was like, oh yeah, I'm back in this. And I know this. And so when the show does present something away over the top space pirates or, weird little jokes of wordplay or just Grogu being cute, I'm there for it in a way that I wasn't in 2019. Again, don't get me wrong. Love the show. Love talking about it. Love the characters. Have the merch. Buy the beer. But I just had a different experience 3 years into this show where I'm like, oh yeah, this. I love this.
Yeah. No, I really like what you're saying of being able to pinpoint not because we have so much Star Wars, because we have a buffet. Every piece of Star Wars doesn't have to be, this is what Star Wars is, period. It is an interpretation of everything that Star Wars can possibly be, and always being connected to the roots and the origins of Star Wars and the important moral guardrails of what Star Wars is, in my opinion. But then exploring new stuff within that, which I think Andor does for sure, which Bad Batch is doing. I think Kenobi even did by slowing down and having a little bit more of an indie film where a middle-aged man, decides to keep trying and reattach to what he believed in as a young person and validate that and all that. But I feel like this episode was it was a statement of what Mando has always been, what this show The Mandalorian has always been, while also evolving. I think the world building was really great and expansive in this. We weren't confined to like necessarily like one place, one story, one image. There was all sorts of, there's weird new pirate, how much the expansion of Navarro City and all of the world building there that's being built on. Seeing Bo-Katan's castle, seeing this new environment for the Children of the Watch group of Mandalorians. There's all this great world building, and the approach that these creators have to Star Wars of really looking at it is an intergalactic variety show, and it's intergalactic vaudeville. And what I mean by that is a taste of everything. This has big action. It has wild, sometimes kind of wacky comedy. It has like great, profound heart and depth. It has a little bit of everything. The fun and absurd mixed with the cool and profound. I feel like that's what these creators see Star Wars as, and that was so on display. And the epic part, I feel like the stakes of the themes are getting bigger, but also these were big spectacle set pieces that, in my opinion, look great on a technological level. The Beast versus the Mandalorians, the asteroid battle, those were clear evolutions to me from the technology and finances of Mandalorian season 1.
Oh yeah, great point. You could just track that in the growth of Navarro. That's how stagecraft has gotten better and better, or whatever. The budgets have gotten higher and higher. I love it. Yeah, I love the space vaudeville thing. It's a great way to look at it. For a lot of different ways. The way I react to that and connect with it is that I'm going to say the name Gorian Shard for probably the rest of my life. I loved it. And that's a very kind of over the top, almost animated and live action character with like pirate moss on his beard. Like it's wacky and wild, but then you have Nonzo Anozi, excuse me, from I know him from Game of Thrones, Zaro Zohan Doxos, there. And it's just like, I'm like, yes, I'm eating my popcorn going, boo, hiss, boo, hiss. I just feel like I'm right there. So I love the vaudeville connection there. That's fun.
Yeah. No, in Gorian Shard is like a perfect example of that, because you get this feeling like, oh, he might actually be a real problem and might actually hurt people that we care about. Like I'm a little frightened of this guy. Also, he looks like a chia pet that was attacked by gravity. Like it's that classic Star Wars. And this whole thing is that, right? The whole show is, let's take, in some ways, like the most cool, badass, the, mystery man under a helmet, lonely bounty hunter. And let's pair him with this cute, borderline silly Muppet and have that relationship break your heart. It is really an investment in the extremes of Star Wars.
Yeah. No, there's we'll get to the big meat of it. And by the way, some of you might be joining us for the first time, a long time. We talk about the whole experience of the show. We talk about the themes. We're not just here for the Easter eggs and the beat by beat recaps. So bear with me here. I want one more point, Joseph. I there was a moment in here we're going to discuss probably, but when Mando tosses Grogu to grief, I thought this entire show is based around what is clearly a fun little prop, right? That's the magic of it. Like the genius of Empire being built, Empire Strikes Back being built on a Muppet, down to the Hensons and the Frank Oz's of it all, right? That was just the genius and the big risk of Empire and Star Wars. And here you got, we're all just gathered around this stage, this vaudeville stage, as you say, and it's clearly they're just tossing around a prop, and I love it. And I'm invested, and I'm there for it. And I'm like, you catch that little green friend grief, and I think that's the spirit of the show.
Absolutely. And you go back to the lesson of Yoda in 1980 in The Empire Strikes Back is, don't judge based on appearances. Even something that we can kind of dismiss as silly can actually be the most profound and important encounter you have, and I think that spirit goes on of the cool things have meaning and the weird things have meaning, and it all matters here in Mando world.
Yep. Yep.
The other kind of big picture reaction I had to it is I did feel like it was an evolution in world building and size of the spectacle. But I really like that was reflected in the mood and the plot. We'll get into the big themes and ideas, but I feel like the episode felt like a breath of fresh air because a lot of time has passed and everybody is in a slightly different circumstance. Mando and Grogu have a different energy because they've come together and they've decided they're going to be together, right? Mm-hmm. Everything kind of has this fresh energy because the main characters have a different perspective because of the time that has passed and because of really choosing one another, not protecting one another or clinging to one another, but choosing one another. And now the vibe is different.
I think that is a wonderful point, and it's a great big picture point. It is different, that the choice, the interaction, the connection, the name, it's Grogu, all that stuff versus season 1 was, I don't know what's going on. Season 2 is, I'm probably gonna have to give you up anyways. It absolutely is a different energy. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I think for me that's we don't need to belabor the great time wars that happened on social media yesterday. If anybody was spared of that, there was an interview with many of the creators, but Favreau said some things that I listened to the podcast, and to me it's a little bit ambiguous. Is he talking about the release schedule of the actual shows in our real world, or is he talking hard, firm, this is the amount of time that has passed? People had some logistic questions about how much time has passed. Then on the red carpet, he clarified, hey, yeah, definitely Grogu was training with Luke for a while, between 0 to 2 years.
Yeah.
He reframed it. And I think for me, what's important is the exact mechanics of the time aren't important, or they would be in the show. If the mechanics of the time were really, really important, in my opinion, they'd be in the text. What is in the text, and what I think Favreau is trying to communicate, is it doesn't matter if it's 6 months or 2 years. They have been apart, and neither of them were doing well when they were apart. They had a lot of time to grow together because maybe they were, those first 2 seasons, maybe they happened over a slightly longer time than it feels like. So they really grew together. Then they were apart for a time that felt significant to them. They weren't doing well. And now they have renewed energy as they come back. And also everybody else we're following has had a chance to have a change in station, which we'll talk about. Yeah. And that to me is what's important. It's about the heart of it. It's not about whether it's 3 months or 2 years, or does it exactly line up with this beat. I get having those concerns in conversations, but to me, the point is the heart of it, the heart of this story. They were away. They didn't do well. They're back together. They've got a new energy.
Yeah, it is all about the why of the decision, not the nuts and bolts, the what and the hows. I do like that stuff when it pops up. I'm fascinated. I did not grow up concerned at all about how many days a New Hope was. It's never crossed my mind, and I get it, and it's fun. But again, it is the spirit of it. And I fought in the Game of Thrones wars back in the day, and the pilot episode takes place over months. Just the King's Road itself is a 30-day travel time. So the opening scene with Jamie and Cersei to the end is months. You don't feel it. You don't worry about it. You're just there for what is going on and the why behind it, and not the time. But I understand it. But the fervor, I'm not trying to, I don't want to kick up the dust. And no disrespect to anyone who I guess just couldn't stand that answer or didn't want to, didn't like it. I don't know. It went a little too far and again, misses the point. How does Star Wars make you feel? And why does that work? That's more important than on this particular date. Grogu completed 6 months of training.
Yeah, I get it if you want to work through for yourself. It's fun to work through and maybe even try to come up with like ways that it makes sense of really spacing out. Like, okay, but this person left here at this time, and what were these other characters doing? Like, I get having a fun conversation about it. I get wrestling with it. Those things are great.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the conversations I saw like tipped into just anger in dismissing the show and dismissing the work of the creators. And for me, that is the too far. The anger about it is not for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one.
All right, well then let's move on to big ideas in the show. What were the themes? What was at stake? Where did you go with that idea?
I texted a friend of ours, Alden, about 1 a.m. last night. I said, this episode is I'm calling it emotional half torsos. And this idea that for me, clearly a lot of things have moved on. Some big missions have been completed in lives, and new things have been built, new homes established. You could be a landed gentry if you stick around here, but a lot of the players have defaulted their old programming. It seems like I'm just pointing at the screen and saying, hey, that line. But I thought that was a lot of what was going on here. And we're fractured and we're scattered. And that's kind of at play, as well as establishing this big through line that I think it's not surprising based on some of the marketing and interviews of what is a Mandalorian, right? Big overriding theme, and this question this season is going to finally maybe really be just dug into. But everyone is so disjointed, and I love the way it begins because there's only one way, and we see a lot about that. There's only one way, the way of the Mandalore. So let's define that. Let's truly define that, and you have all these people fractured throughout the galaxy and throughout the story, and how can we connect them? What's the through line? Well, how can they all move forward to something new but still be who they are?
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think this episode was structured in a way to kind of support this idea of change, and is change possible? This was such a setting the table of ideas and of thematic stakes episode. We're used to Din having his one mission and being, or a side quest, because he needs a loaf of bread, but first he needs to collect 30 goats, kind of video game structure. And he's got his big mission to redeem himself and go back to Mandalore, but he kind of pokes at it from lots of different directions in this episode. And I feel like that's kind of setting up everything that might be at stake in this episode, but also playing with this idea of, is change possible? All the characters that we meet are wrestling with the possibility of change, or reverting back to their old programming, or being forced by others back to their own programming. But I think that the big question hanging over Din is, will he change? Should he change? Can he change? We've seen him evolve quite a bit over these 2 seasons, and he's utterly committed to Grogu as a foundling, as this clan of 2. He's now committed to actually being a dad, turning everything into a teachable moment, which is great and fun. But also everything he's doing is to make up for this intimate connection that he chose to have with Grogu. And so he's really, really stuck in this great energy of, he is both evolving and benefiting from evolving in going out in the galaxy and being knowledgeable and making connections and making alliances and trying new things. So he's this picture of a progressive Mandalorian, but at the same time is also utterly determined to cling to the old ways.
Yeah.
It not only just what he knew, but that the life that he knew is all about the old ways, you know? And I think all of these things that just Din himself is going through in the episode is this fascinating push and pull between I want to see and try new things. I benefit from new things, but also I'm not acknowledging that. And almost everything I say is trying to get something old back.
Yeah. I love that. You said push and pull. That this is almost me just asking and putting things down on the table. It's like I kind of felt, particularly after the first viewing, all these characters have made big changes or had big pushes forward in their lives and choices. And then there's we all do that, right? We level up, we step up, we change, and maybe things still aren't working or the new problems still rise. And then you kind of step back a little bit, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back, maybe type of approach here. And I just felt that even Navarro's great. Grief is wonderful. Just love Carl Weathers. The droids, we'll talk all about the cape, but even he's kind of, we don't want to connect to the New Republic. We've come this far that no, we're going this way. This is who we are. And again, we can discuss what that might mean and everything that. And I'm not saying the New Republic is perfect, but I took that as kind of like, oh, okay, you only want to go one direction with who you are. You got your Bo-Katan who's made these big strides and had this big purpose, and it didn't go the way as planned, and we didn't get to see the details of that. She gets to describe it to us, and now she's questioning which is the way forward, what is the best way. And they all have this. There's, especially when it comes to Mandalore, which we know we're heading to, they all have this kind of thing to me of just like, well, it's poisoned, well, it's nothing, there's no magic. Armor is kind of like, hey, I told you got to go there, but I don't even that's not possible. It's not there anymore. And that push and pull, as you said, I felt that through everyone's storyline.
No, absolutely. I think that push and pull is reflected everywhere, and I think it sets the stakes really well for the entire season, but also just really for Din himself, in that he has a different mission, right? He's used to being very transactional. He's used to being on a mission that he has to do, right?
Yeah.
This mission is extremely personal and emotional, and it's about himself, right? Even the personal mission to protect Grogu and to get Grogu to the Jedi was in service of the way and, in service of the child. This is for him, right? So on one hand, he's got this new mission that is personal and emotional, to be a Mandalorian again, the way he defines it. But he's also on this new journey to be a father, which he's kind of played around with, but now he's all in. He's got a handbook practically, So there's this push and pull even between his missions, and the things he's doing in this episode are a great push and pull. I loved his obsession with IG-11, right? IG-11, we've talked about. I know you love IG-11 as this symbol, this lesson from Queel to Din, that you can change your programming, and that in particular, a father figure can help younger generations be what they want to be. Queel says, droids aren't good or bad. They reflect who trained them, who they imprinted on. He says that in the same episode that Grogu chokes Cara Dune, and Grogu selflessly heals grief. And you really get that idea that Din is learning, I need to show who Grogu can be. I need to exemplify that. So IG-11, represents all these great ideas about growth and change, and Din's hatred of droids, and then learning that, droids can change. And now he's the symbol of evolution, and the new, he's now making into this encrusted symbol of old, right? With this absolute refusal. Everybody keeps trying to offer him a new droid. It creates this really funny picture that I sometimes relate to of when I go to a restaurant for the first time, that I may be like, I don't know, I want to go to a restaurant I know. And then somebody takes me to a new restaurant. And I'm like, actually, this is awesome. And I found a dish I love. And now this is one of my favorite restaurants. and I always have the exact same dish. And Din's got that vibe of like, okay, I used to have a dish that I ate, but I tried a new dish, and now that is the only dish I eat. So it is both progress and clinging to the past at the same time.
It's so true, and I think something we can all identify with. I know your go-to meals, and everyone probably knows mine. Yes, so yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, the IG-11 thing. Just once again, IG-11 kind of being the core of themes and episodes. I love that about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You did a great overview of kind of how everybody is wrestling with some amount of change, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into the different sort of factions of potential change.
Yeah.
The children of the Watch are, of course, by their dogma, unyielding. They resist change. There's a creed. It was written, generations and generations ago, and they follow it, even when it seems like maybe sometimes they don't want to. They are determined to rebuild their old ways, and they have been forced to adapt to new circumstances. I love that we catch up with them, and it feels like they've been in the sewers of Navarro. They've been on at least the covert of 2 or 3 there have been on the Ring space station. Now they've found a new environment that is getting closer to recreating what they had. There's, a cave, there's water. They've rebuilt the numbers of the covert or brought them together. So they're getting closer and closer to recreating what they had. But I feel like that beast is a metaphor for like, but it's still not perfect. You can't go home again because this planet, whatever planet they're on, is literally not your home, and they literally don't know the rules of it yet. And that is literally coming out of the water to bite them. How did you feel about that image of the Children of the Watch?
I was right there with you on that. I even wrote down this idea of Din saving the Children of the Watch is some solid foreshadowing for the future, and perhaps what to stake this season of him and his new way, his new ship, his new son, but returning to literally save them. Because though they're skilled, though they have great traditions and pride and honor and know who they are, that ain't currently working. A different way. So everything about it. And I know a lot of people. I too had I thought it was a great opening sequence because I too had that like, oh, are we flashing back? And then pretty quickly you learn that Wesley Kimmel's probably not going to be playing a young Pedro Pascal, Jimmy's kid. But I love it. I just love watching all that. And I think it connects, at least I hope it does, but I love watching the armorer build that helmet because it's so organic in a way, right? And I think I've always looked, and I think a lot of people have looked at Mando tech. It's uber sci-fi, right? It's super commandos, and it's super tech, and yes, even they built it to fight the Jedi, but really slowing that process down. We've seen her work before, we've seen her magic before, but to see how that helmet was built and what that technological achievement done in such a hands-on, intimate way, and watch her carry that out, and it becomes this big spiritual tradition, and the touch and the skill that is all intertwined in that, and how it really is so personal. Really had affected my way I looked at Mando armor in a way that previous 2 seasons have brought to my attention, but I haven't slowed down enough to look at it. But then all that being washed away so quickly through the dangers of that world, and then Din showing to save the day. I'm with you. Maybe I overspoke on it, but I loved it. I love that opening.
I don't think so. I think, it is a great action set piece to keep up the action end of Star Wars and kick off Mandalorian Season 3 in a big way. But I feel like it is showing us who the Children of the Watch are, showing us who Din is. There are these beliefs in the Children of the Watch that I think a lot of us feel coded as admirable, right? Loyalty and solidarity are the way, Din says in the Book of Boba Fett episode to the armor. And look at them all trying to work together, trying to use their tools. Protecting foundlings is extremely important to them. They're all trying to keep the kids safe. They're following the way.
Yeah.
And it still isn't working. And I so agree with you. Din just comes flying back in his modified ship that represents change, having been around the galaxy, saves the day with this perspective of new and change and evolution, and much like when he returned to the covert in Book of Boba Fett, we talked about, it's just totally got this attitude that Din is the friend who moved away and his high school buddies let him come to the bar, but they don't like him. They don't like that he went away, and they're suspicious of him, maybe thinking he's better or different or got some newfangled idea. I was really affected by the evolution in the armor. She's always been even and stoic, right? Even when she's like, then you are, a Mandalorian no more. It's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that I felt like we really heard emotion in her voice. It sounded like she felt betrayed. Like, I remember when I made your helmet when you were that age, right?
Yeah.
And you ruined it. You're a son who hurt his parent, right? The way she said, you have removed your helmet. And the way that Din really makes the argument of like, okay, so you when you told me about the living minds of Mandalore, you weren't sending me on a quest. You were telling me that it is impossible. And now when I come back to you with all this great energy saying, it's possible, I'm going to do it. It seems like she doesn't want to follow the creed the way she says, this is the way. It's like he's hurt her and she wants him gone was the energy that I got.
Yeah.
And he's determined to follow this creed. It was almost like that first time when she wanted to be like, yes, I mean, I got to accept you back if you do that, because that is the way. But I kind of don't want to.
Yeah. Emily swallows, this is the way. Just big shrug, kind of like, I love that point that you made. Even into the action, we've seen her in action before, and it's great, right? I love some of the stuff that we've seen with her before. You and I have always said we love the armor. We really appreciate Emily Swallow's performance. But there's some questions we have about the armor and some of your beliefs and some of your choices. But I love watching work. But even with the creature, her fighting it, I all the way through was something different. It was a little less controlled, a little more emotional. I really agree with that, and really agree with that conversation that you're talking about there. And just like Din's energy of hey, I've got evidence. Look here. Well, yep, this proves that we can't go to that planet, but someone went there. Maybe it's not poisoned. I don't know. Even Bo-Katan, obviously, we'll talk about as energy. But so I just love I love where Din's at. But that's a great observation about the armor.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. And I'm not saying I have found the secret. That's the truth of the scene. What I really like about the way that Favreau writes and so many of the directors direct is an emotion's there, but you don't necessarily know exactly what it means. So this is total speculation, but to me it really felt like she's hurt by him and kind of just wants him gone and doesn't want him to redeem himself.
Well, yeah, but and I think that's again the power of that opening sequence. It is. I love that you said it fulfills Star Wars' deal with all of us. We'll give you some pew 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 at its big scene, but just the connection between her and the young foundling as he puts helmet on. She's very clearly this mother figure, very clearly this leader, and it isn't just you got your helmet. It's very personal, important. And so, you just imagine Din doing that some 20 years ago or whatever it is. You get the connection. So that sets up the hurt, sets up what she's expressing, I think, in that scene.
And it sets up really well. It's one thing for Din to tell us in that, great emotional scene with O'Mara that, he was very young when he first put on the helmet and hasn't taken it off in front of anyone since. We get it. Seeing a child that age go through it with the with the kid Mando helmet made me feel Din's commitment and Din's loss and Din's need to be reinstated on a more emotional level.
Yeah, totally love that.
Well, let's travel with the Mandalorian from that interaction with the Children of the Watch wrestling with change. Not their favorite thing, to somebody who deeply wants change, and that is Greef on Navarro. Is really great. I know you and I both just did a recent rewatch of Mandalorian season 1, 2, and Book of Boba Fett. So it's great to see that Greef has accomplished exactly the change he said he wanted. He's like, I can make this place a vital trading post, most important place in the Outer Rim, and we get that in that kind of funny robot Navarro greeting that almost like it was going to ask Din to, listen closely as menu options may have changed. Phone robot saying the independent trade anchor and Outer Rim hyperlane port of Navarro. The other droid calling it the gem of the Outer Rim. So we saw the beginning of this change, but now we see this explosive, expansive growth, this sense of accomplishment. And then, of course, the past, the pirates trying to drag Grief and Navarro back from the change. What really resonated with you there?
I think number one, I think the beauty, the expansion of Navarro. I might take Grief up on his offer there. I was as Din's flying in, I was like, I'd get a spot out over the hill, maybe a little bit out of town, so I can get some space, move in. Yeah, I'm on it, and it's fun, and we can joke about tracking the budget of the show growing with Navarro, but it's truly a good part of the story, and the pirates very clearly all out there. And Grief's a fascinating character to me because, like I said, I think his heart is. I think his heart's in a good spot. I think he's still, he's very businessy, landed gentry, an old British historical kind of term for landowner. That could, that could be weird. But I am fascinated by some of the things. Great change, but hey, we're going to do this ourselves. Something I respect, but we're not going to be part of a larger community, at least not yet. And then you got the past always coming back. Always going to come back to not just haunt you, but to tempt you to stay how you were. So I love watching him deal with that and stand tall as a big blustery character as he is. High magistrate, loved all that. But that was a great personal moment.
Yeah, there's great comedy. There's great world building. Great to just see all of the fun Star Wars weirdos, new and old on the streets. All sorts of just great world building. But yeah, I think the thing that I'm most affected by is it's coded as the pushing into the new. It's to me coded in American pioneer pushing forward. So when I worked for the Minnesota Historical Society, I got to learn a lot about the way that different communities, as they pressed out into the West, would advertise. A lot of the identity that Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities where I grew up, still has is based on, we're going to say these things about ourselves, but we're telling it to ourselves, but we're actually mostly putting it in newspapers that we ship back east to convince people from the coast that this is what we have to offer. It was a boosterism, and the there's some specific lines of dialogue from Grief Karga that he's like a total booster of, like, oh, we got jobs, we got the mines, hey, we got hot springs. If you look into the history of America expanding westward, is every place that could have a hot spring for your health had a hot spring for your health. It was, it's a lava planet, so fair enough at the hot springs. But there was that real tie to real history there. It was interesting to me. But I loved how direct. There's a lot of ideas of change and push and pull, but this was some of the most direct of Grief saying, I want to leave my violence in the past. I want to have this peaceful community. I got some ego tied up into it, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
But the pirates trying to drag him back from change, literally to the cantina and to violence. Grief saying that is a school now, and the pirate Vane saying, I say it's still a bar. Vane saying, you paid us for murder and mayhem inside these doors. And it's that kind of classic Star Wars thing of, like, you were this once, so you can never be anything else. It's the belief that traps Kylo Ren from trying to turn away from the dark side. Like, I committed to it. Nobody's ever going to forgive me. I did it once. I'm stuck. And I thought that was really interesting. And also, a lot in this episode about protecting kids, having space for kids. I thought the fact that the school was really invoked again was powerful.
Yeah, I even go back to the Mandos, right? Get the kids up into the caves. Yeah, absolutely love that. Yeah, it runs through everything. I mean, look, we just went through Book of Boba Fett, Cad Bane. Oh, I know who you are. Anything else is weakness. You think it runs through so many things, and just in that fun little piratey scene. But love watching Grief stand tall with what he wants to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you heard a small voice say hi, the ghost in my phone started playing a voice message. I apologize. There's not a robot in my house, just a ghost.
We're good.
Yeah, the ghost in my phone. So moving on from Navarro, we already talked a little bit about, I think, everything going on with IG-11 is this symbol of both forward movement and the possibility of change, and then Din being dug in on. I need this one. This one is my friend.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts about IG-11 and in the amount of the episode that was dedicated to Din's obsession that he needed this droid?
I like his point. I don't know if it was Brendan Wayne, Lateef Crowder, or anyone who was that point was that I need this one. This one was solid. I was happy to, we knew that statue was going to be there, right? That had been in a lot of the trailers and promo shots and stuff. But to actually have it that directly affect the plot and harken back to what we learned from IG-11, to even the first the dialogue that is being used that is from episode 1 of the show. That was just I really like this. It's a good use of that character. We'll see.
Yeah, and for me, it's really intriguing too that statue was there in season 2. But when they put that in, was that was that a fun detail, or did they know they were building to this story? I think there's. I don't need to get into all of the discussions of should all creative things have elaborate plans or not, and all that. But it's stuck to it felt to me like, oh, this was a gift. We kind of put this in the background thing is fun. Of course, Grief would honor him, and Grief's a salesperson. This is a great way to have everybody build up like this is the hero of the town, right? Yeah. Hey, but now that that's there, that's a storytelling possibility. That's to me the kind of great. You throw an idea out there, and then something can blossom from it.
Yeah. Love that.
Speaking of blossoming, let's talk about the opposite of blossoming. What's happening with poor Bo-Katan. I think she's kind of our final vision of wrestling with change. She had a lot of great energy and forward movement, the kind of energy and forward movement that Din has for his mission. She was trying to make change. She had a plan. She had allies. She had resources, but she failed to make change. And now she's just hanging out on her depression throne, in my opinion. How did you feel about the Bo-Katan ideas of change?
It looked like she started a digital media company with her friends that folded in a year, and she just had that like, there's no point in any of this. Just no point. Absolutely no point in this. Loved everything about it. I love that we got it right away. Again, going to, a lot of the trailer stuff seemed to spring forward from this episode, which I love, that we still got a lot of room for surprises. But just love that this sets the tone for what we got going on and what's the big thing with Mandalorian. Her thing too, I mean, I love some lines. Your cult gave up on Mandalore long before the purge. Where were you then? And in that, it's been something we'd heard before, I think, in one of the trailers. And that, to me, the energy of the conversation, I was expecting something different. Not her just kind of being like, everyone left me. You got that sword? Wave it. There's no magic in any of this. There's no purpose. All these traditions are gone. Nothing. Everyone's mercenaries now. Mandalore's been plundered and purged throughout time. Used and abused by so many people, maybe even us as well. So there's just nothing. There's nothing left to join, she says. And now we got her. I think it starts to answer the question of the first time she lost the Darksaber and what it means to her. And when you get so close and then you lose out, it's not just about change, but when you lose out or you feel you lost or you're down and depressed, that's a great way to look at it. You just feel as there's nothing there. And for her to be, that's her starting point. I'm excited to see where she can go because we need that side. We need what she represents. I think she has an understanding what the children watch are at their most destructive. And we need these two kind of ideals to marry. So to see her being so far down and out, not rooting for depression, but it was fun. It was fun for me to watch. I got it. I liked it.
Yeah. I really like Bo-Katan's perspective that she has known the extremes, right? When she says, your cult and all the other splinter groups have made it impossible for us to come together. She's talking about herself, hiding out on a moon as a full-fledged member of Death Watch, right? She has been to the extreme that the Children of the Watch, intriguing to me if those are actually related, since, the Mandos we see rescue child Din, have the mark of the Death Watch on them. So she knows the extremes of those old ways. But she, if we're to believe some of the stuff we saw in Rebels, she swung much closer to her Sister Satine's sensibility of like, we have to defend, we have to protect, but just lashing out for revenge, that's only going to hurt yourself. I feel for the character Bo-Katan, who's like, I've tried it both ways and nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's really intriguing about where she is now. We met her when she had a lot of hope, I think, for the possibility of change, but in particular, rebirth, right? We can bring all the Mandalorians back together. We can go back to our planet. We can rebuild. We can start again. Rebirth, which was both practical and the sort of the spiritual and the mythic. And I love that she was down on the practical, but real down on the spiritual.
Yeah.
And the mythic, right? The quote of like, yeah, they're not going to follow anybody without the Darksaber. And when she says, why don't you lead them? Wave that thing around and they'll do whatever you say. What a dismissive thing for a Mandalorian leader to say about the Darksaber. And then when she gives him the information about the mines, like, it was mine. It was a mine, or Beskar ore came from it. That was great. But there's nothing magic about the mines of Mandalore. Really attacking not just sort of like the mythic and, as she says, the superstitious. There's this line between believing in larger ideas that I think can, of course, tip into superstition. But then there's also like, we have to invest meaning in symbols, meaning in places, meaning in groups in order for us to be inspired and keep going as a culture. That's my belief. And I think that's a little bit of what's at stake, of like, the Children of the Watcher may be verging into like just superstition, rigid, dangerous superstition. You know, there's no flexibility. Things can only be done this way, the old way. Now Bo-Katan has lost all hope in the sort of it is just a blade like any other lightsaber. It is special, but hey, if we invest this meaning into it, if we choose to give it this symbolic power, it will help us. The sort of the healthy version of that. And both are kind of lost. And I feel like Din's final line of, I will find out if the planet is really poisoned, is obviously practical, but it really is like, is the past really poisoned? Can we find a future by looking at our past? Is there a power there that could still bring us all together and give us meaning? And two of the big influences in his life are like, no, the armor and Bo-Katan are both like, there's nothing there. And that's his renewed mission, to be like, I do think there is something there at the heart of what it means to be a Mandalorian.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying there. It's a great thematic end to this episode and setting him up for what's going on, how it is. Again, yeah, you're right. In the past, it's these missions he accepts. It's the transactional nature. Now here he is asking for help and to find, fine, I'm going to go determine this myself. And maybe the answer is, yeah, you're right, it is poison. Maybe it doesn't matter, or maybe it's everything. We have to find out. We have to find the way forward here, and I'm going to go do it. That was a great setup for what's to come, but also just a great scene in itself.
Yeah, just an amazing scene. I think we've all kind of expected Bo-Katan to be chomping at the bit to fight him for the Darksaber, and maybe that moment will still come. I think that's a good possibility, but it was great to see her down on her luck, and to see we just hear her tell us about it, but it is yet another moment of people trying to change and falling back into old ways, right? These Mandalorians, apparently, maybe we don't know, but Cosca Reeves, Axe Woves, people who seem close to her, also won't follow her without the Darksaber. They revert back to just using their skills to be mercenaries, like what Din has evolved from. That's powerful too.
Yeah. And it was just, I sense the sadness and I feel it and I get it. I think it was a very real moment. I keep saying depression, but just the slouch, the ruler on a throne that maybe doesn't want to be there anymore for various reasons. Just loved it. And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, especially some of the trailer stuff, some of the shots. There's some shots maybe we haven't seen, so I won't go into them. But like, I was expecting a different energy, like a more of a, you bleep, what are you doing here? Like, where were you? Instead, it's just kind of this, I don't know. Nothing matters.
I was not expecting sweatpants Bo-Katan,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I really related to. I think it's
Yeah.
really hard that, I know I am not alone in this. There are things I want to accomplish, and I'm proud of myself for feeling like I'm doing everything I can. And then sometimes you're not making the progress you want, and you just want to be in your sweatpants on your throne, mad at everyone and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Other big idea that I thought was woven through this episode, and I think is going to be central going forward, is just the idea of parenting.
Yeah.
We talked about it a lot, but we see the rigid way a child is brought up by the children of the Watch, and the compassion of that culture and its emphasis on taking care of the foundlings, which makes us feel the depth of Din's connection there. But there's grief is in kind of a paternal role, even, right? He kind of wants to be the town's dad. His ego is invested in it, but he's still like, I'm the high magistrate. Nobody else is going to mess it up. I'm going to make this great for everybody. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I got it.
Town dad's got it. And then, probably the most central thing is everything going on with Din and this great new energy of his commitment to being a dad. It was in the trailer, but I love that it's not just the practical, it's the philosophical of like, okay, if the kid is back with me, it's permanent. I am going to teach him what I think is important. Being a Mandalorian is not just about learning how to fight. You also have to know how to navigate the galaxy, even down to some of the great comedy stuff of Grogu, squeezing the Anzellan and Mando saying, sorry about that. He's young, there's a real awareness of Grogu's changed too. He seems more engaged, less cautious, less frightened, but he still needs to be parented by Din. How did you feel about all that?
Well, here's where I'll start. A question. I've watched it a few times, but even his new pram, isn't he's kind of controlling that, right?
Yep. It seems like he's controlling it, and it might have a lid, but we're not seeing it. So just visually, I don't think you even need to go like, this one doesn't have a lid. It just feels more open, so you feel it, as you're watching. Yeah,
the spirit of it, more open. And then I swear at one point he has his hand on like a control, like a wheel, like a little button or something. And obviously a far cry from where we were first are with him and Din, when Din's kind of controlling him on the wrist and everything. And not a big moment, but I just took a different energy. If he's out and about, I saw that and I was like, oh, he could turn left if he wants. He could turn right. He could turn back around. So now there's definitely some choice there for him to pilot around. And then it also adds another layer of not just protection that Din needs to provide for him, but understanding that, hey, you're in that by yourself. So let me help you through that and imprint on you what I am in the best way I can. So I love that. I love that energy. I love seeing that. We'll talk about the Purgle, of course, and the connection, but I just love, Grogu. To me, I read that scene as Grogu seeing what is really there, seeing what others maybe have missed. Yes, this is, we haven't, other than Rebels, we haven't had this, so it's new to some folks. We can talk about that in a bit, but it's Grogu connected to something bigger, and that's not a parent, but I have been a kid, still am, have been a child, and just that's got to be, that's got to be terrifying for a parent. This big giant world, and you got your own pram. Let me try to do the best I can to set you up because I'm in it. He's made space for Grogu, right? Literally and spiritually, and he's committed to that. So I think it's going to be a theme throughout, indeed.
Yeah, and I love that. I love just seeing the way the N1 is set up. That Grogu has his own room, but if he gets scared, he can come sleep with Daddy.
And then you come on downstairs. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, and I just think that it's. I love his new energy. He's always observed and been kind of taking in the world, but like he's very fast to duck, to hide, to step away. And he seems like he's really listening. Like there's a vibe almost like he's a little bored by some of the adult conversations, but he's listening and he's taking them in. There's that great shot between him and the armorer where he's really taking in all this information, and he's kind of staring at the armorer like, what are we going to do about this, armor? And she kind of gives him that slow deadpan look of like, does this thing have an opinion about this?
Yeah. Just different energy all around. I love that. I love it.
Yeah. One other idea that I wanted to share here is a very small thing, but it was just, I don't know if it's just there to be playful or if you felt anything else from it. I won't call it a theme, but there is a repeated beat of a joke about joke or revelation about the way we ingest film and television. There's the term diegetic versus non-diegetic. Non-diegetic is what most music in film and television is. It's external to the world. The characters are not aware of the soundtrack. Luke doesn't know that, the binary sunset is just slapping while he's staring, right? And there are a couple beats in this episode where the music initially sounds non-diegetic and then is being revealed is actually internal to the world of Star Wars. We hear those drums that we're very familiar with as the armor is hammering that helmet for the Foundling. And then we cut to actual drums being played as part of the ritual. When Mando goes to Navarro, we hear what is to me like really good but funny space Renfest music, and then we walk by that little busking band, and the captions even say group playing folk music. So it happens twice. There's a famous Mel Brooks a bit about it where there's a whole orchestra, and all that. What do you make of that? Why do you think that's there twice in this episode, that we think that we are hearing something that is, just for our ears, but it's actually internal to the world, to the story we're watching?
Oh man, this is great. I love this challenge here. I let me go this direction. What you think you're hearing in your head is actually affecting the world around you. How about that? I was a little bummed that we didn't have like some depressive emo, like some Paramore playing while Bo-Katan is sitting on the throne.
And we cut to the Max Rebo on a keyboard playing these really depressing
or like angry early Paramore angry depressive riot stuff. I love that. Yeah, no, that's where I'd go with it. And yeah, no, you do know. I love that opening sequence, even to where the sounds and the music, the drums we're hearing over the opening logo, right? The helmet logo. So that's where I would go with it. Just a reminder of what's in your head can affect those around you.
Yeah, I think for me, it made the different states of the cultures pop. It made it feel like this is the mood we want to convey. This is part of our ritual, and there are two rituals, right? One is this ancient, a rite, and this is the music. These are the flags. This is the formation. This is the bowl, right? This is the way. It's so tied up in that, and I don't think that group is busking. I think that Grief had auditions, picked them out in particular because they got exactly the right low-key fun shopping vibe for the courtyard. Look, it's so on purpose, and I feel like letting us see that it's a part of the world reminds us that both of these musical choices are the choice of the characters.
No, I haven't worked in malls for years. Occasionally you hire a choral group to go around and sing during the holidays. Yeah. And it's the mood. I absolutely did not take them as just setting up shop and collecting credits in a guitar case. I thought Grief wanted to set the tone and mood. You mentioned like the droid and everything. The droid's walking around talking about it too.
Yep.
And that's where the gem of the Outer Rim. It makes me think of like, Reno, the best little city in the world, or some kind of it's a chamber of commerce marketing thing there. And so I think I took it as the music was there on purpose, very much so.
Yeah, Grief's selling Star Wars keychains that say "Gem of the Outer Rim," right?
Yes.
Any other big picture thematic ideas before we move on?
No, we definitely got to them all for me.
Final thing for the first chunk of our podcast here is we always like to talk about the title, because sometimes the titles in the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Mandoverse in general can have some great ambiguity. This one is the Apostate. The actual dictionary definition in our human world of apostate leads to the act of apostasy. Apostasy is an act of refusing to continue, follow, obey, or recognize a religious faith, abandonment of a previous loyalty. And it all, of course, tracks, but I think it's intriguing because that's the label being given to Din. That's what Din's going around the galaxy telling people what he is. I'm an apostate, but he didn't choose it. He didn't want it, right? So how do you reckon with that?
We went to the same spot. I did this and I remember, and folks, so you hear a word that you've heard your whole life, and you're like, hold on, let me actually look that up, right? I do this a lot. I do this a lot, especially because sometimes you might learn that phrase you use, oh, maybe you shouldn't keep using that, right? You learn about where stuff comes. I do this a lot. So I did this when Paz Vizsla said this in Book of Boba Fett, and I redid it here today. And you're so right. Someone who was once part of something, but rejects it, but can return, but also one that embraces an opinion contrary to previous beliefs. And I keep going to the title is the Apostate, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe Bo-Katan's more the Apostate than he is right now at this point, or the armor. Like, but he keeps calling himself that, so I think I take it as a reference to him. But I'm like, I think he might discover that is not who he is, and that maybe it's not fair that a lot of this idea of Din is trying to return with a new perspective, because he hasn't rejected. He keeps saying this is the way, and that's why I went back earlier. I was like, we're gonna find out what that way is. If the way is the way of Mandalore, well, now we really need to define what that is, because there's different versions of it, and there might always be different versions of it. And maybe that's part of the point. And so it's very interesting to me that, again, he's feeling that. But how often do we all say maybe bad things about ourselves that aren't 100% true? And you got to work your way through it and find yourself in that. So I went to the same direction you did, that it didn't 100% match up, but maybe that was the point. I don't know.
I think it's the point. I mean, I think it's, diving a little deep, because I think, you could say that's the term for somebody like this. But the specificity that the word in our human world means somebody who chose to do this is fascinating, because we've never got that answer. Din's been told he's not a Mandalorian anymore, but he still follows the way. When in the final episode of Book of Boba Fett, when Boba Fett's like, do you want to run? A lot of people would run, and you'd be like, no, if we have to die here, I'll do it in the name of honor. This is the way. And there's that funny interaction where Boba Fett says, you still believe that BS? And he's like, yes, this is the way. And Boba Fett's like, well, good for me. So I don't think Din has ever said, I don't agree. I'm still a Mandalorian. I can make this right. And so it's got this interesting, he doesn't want to be an apostate. He broke the rules, but he didn't want to walk away from anything else. And so it is a term and identity that he's allowing to be forced on him. Yeah. He could just walk away and say, I am a Mandalorian. This is the way for me. I learned many wonderful things, but I'm going to evolve and change. And he's not. He's still going around the galaxy going, Mom gave me a D, so that's my definition now. I'm a D- person, because that's what I was assigned to be, Yeah.
Even because, he chose to take the mask off, going back to the Believer episodes, looking at that one in particular, but IG-11, but the IG-11 was a droid, and then of course in the rescue, but I go to that one in the Believer episode, and he chose, but like in his heart, isn't he kind of like, it's like he keeps kind of saying to the armor, like, but don't we preach this? Like, what's the reason we say that? Like, what do we do all this stuff if not to protect someone like Grogu? I did it for out of the kindness and the good intentions of my heart. All right, but you're saying I ain't it, so I guess that's what I am. And again, I agree with you too. It's a general term and everything, but I don't know. I spent a lot of time thinking about that today.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I just really think it's interesting, because I think it's at the heart of this choice that he's not making yet. He's got all this great renewed energy, but he isn't yet going, hey, you know what? It was fine to show my kid my face. And that's the question, is will he get to a point where he goes, I did everything. I went back. I bathed. Hey, I found a mythosaur. I got this Darksaber. Turns out I'm leading all of Mandalore. You know what? Maybe I can decide what I do with my helmet or not,
What the way is.
Yeah. All right. We also like to throw in here anything you disliked or questioned. Since we spent a lot of time talking about what we're really finding in the episode, was there anything that didn't work for you?
No, the only thing I'd say is there's like 3 different plays in this episode, which is totally fine, and I think it wasn't a problem. It was just something I recognized and noticed, and so it all connects together. The themes are all there. I hope they are. We just explored all of them, but it just felt like that, and so it wasn't as smooth as other episodes for me. But it was a great reminder that this is a first episode of a season. And again, to mention Game of Thrones, from 2012 on, every review of the show of the first episodes legally had to contain the words, "It's setting the pieces and putting it on the board," right? Like that's what you do. And I really felt it in this one. And it stood out, but in looking at it and analyzing it and finding those connections, the episode flowed for me a little bit better on the second viewing.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bump for me in the thematic adapting to change. The previous seasons of Mandalorian are almost always he's got a larger quest, but each individual episode is a beginning, middle, and end of one part of his quest. A side quest on the larger quest. And I feel like this was organized much more thematically of like he wants to go to Mandalore and redeem himself, and he kind of pokes at it in three different ways. He goes and finds the armorer to show her this proof that it's real, and she doesn't really give him the emotional support that he wants. Then he's approaching it practically of like, I need this droid to help me. If it is poisoned, you got to protect the kid. So I'm kind of approaching it practically, and but now that has turned now into a side quest of I got to find that chip. And then instead of going anywhere to find the chip, he kind of goes to this third, like, but you know what? Bo-Katan might come with me. Maybe she can help me. Yeah. I'll join. That's big that he said he'll join her movement, right?
Huge.
So I think it did bump for me a little bit because it wasn't the normal, he's got one quest, here's the beginning, the middle, and end. But it was all focused on the, I need to go to Mandalore, but I need help. For it, who can help me. And now we've got all of these set pieces, the threat to Navarro, the anger of the pirates at him, his relationship with the armor, the possibility of Bo-Katan coming. He could run into a bunch of her former friends who are mercenaries. We don't know. So a lot was set up, but it was structured differently than other Mandalorian episodes.
Yeah, and I know Rick's got 3 episodes this season, so I'm curious to see what he does because I've loved all of his other episodes. It took me a little bit to get chapter 6 up to the level of the other ones that I enjoy, but he's so great. I just love his work. I just really love him. So I was like, oh, okay. It like I said, three different plays, not even 3-act play, 3 different plays, which is totally fine. But I'm with you on it. At the end of it, and especially second viewing, the connections are there. And truly, the pieces are back on the board.
The pieces are back on the board. I would have ruined the episode, but there's a comic beat in my mind where Din is vowed to find out if it's poisoned, and she's saying goodbye, Din Djarin. And then he pops back in and goes, you don't happen to have a memory chip for an IG droid, do you?
Do you?
Because I got to take care of that too. Yeah. Slim possibility there of that happening. Yeah, no, I love Rick Famuyiwa's direction. Every moment feels so confident and aware of what that beat is about. Great mix of comedy, action, and setting the plot and theme table. Much agreed. All right, shall we take a quick break and return?
Let us return.
Excellent. We'll be back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, Chapter 17, The Apostate. We love talking the big ideas, but we also like to get into the fun details, the Star Wars canon and lore connections, and action and comedy, and all sorts of great stuff like that. So we're going to dive in, Ken, by first talking about some of the big canon things. There had been a lot of discussion about, will there be characters that we know returning? That had been, one of the surprises and thrills and sometimes criticisms of season 2. But the first episode of season 2, Cobb Vanth, an obscure character from a book, explodes onto the scene, and Boba Fett is back, and the Great Dragon. And this episode, something even bigger. Purgles.
Yes.
Physically bigger, even bigger than the Great Dragon. Purgles. The Purgles, of course, the hyperspace traveling space whales introduced in Rebels. Ken, how did you feel about the Purgles' presence?
Man, we are just one step away from puffer pigs, and I can't wait for this day. I loved it. It was a beautiful scene. For those who may be only listened to Force Center the last couple of years, or just haven't followed my journey around this hellscape that is digital media, I was in the past, I think, perhaps a little outspoken about the space whales. But to clarify it, and time has changed my perspective on it without a doubt. Much like the puffer pigs, I do love them more than I did back when they showed up. But for me, it was like the space whales, the purrgil, it's such a wild, crazy, kind of out there concept, especially when you first see it. And last night, or this episode, this is the first time a lot of people are seeing them. I had to maybe do a little explaining on my couch last night to Grace. And I think my point was there was a time where Dave was being crowned king, as happens, and this is around Rebels, and people wanted him in the films and stuff. And hey, look, we're here. Here's where we are. But I think I fought against it of like, hey, you're all rejecting episode 7 for whatever reasons. This guy's got whales flying around in space. So maybe it wouldn't work as much as you want it to be because you want some lore based pew, pew, pew. And I'm unearthing up, digging up old debates and fights and stuff like that. I've moved well beyond, but to see it now, to see where it's grown and to see what it means, to see what it represented. And it's just a beautiful shot. And then, yes, it tips maybe not just a cap to Rebels, but it maybe looks forward to Ahsoka. Who knows? Or it was just this wonderful moment in which they are there. And if you see them and you feel them and are connected, they'll be there, show themselves to you, and you can maybe see them. So it worked for me on that level, as well as just hey, check by the box. Those space whales are still flying around. I loved it. In the end, I loved it. I loved it a lot.
Yeah. I really, really loved it. It made me literally sit up on my couch and give a little purrgil cheer. I really love the purrgils. I abuse the word pulpy, and now beginning to abuse the term high fantasy by using them so much. But it's really important to my love of Star Wars that it is pulling on these ideas of the fantastic and the otherworldly. But somehow we still see reflections of ourselves in the real world and the utterly fantastic. And I love kind of taking that idea of, humanity really did look around and like, how are birds flying? We want to do that. And the idea that maybe it's lost to most people. So it's just a myth and a rumble that this, technical thing of like advanced beings have hyperspace travel. Actually, it's an ancient natural thing. And somebody looked and saw those purrgils and went, we can do that. We have, what are they doing? We can do that. I like that it is both fantastic and there is something about our real world sense of wonder that I see in the purrgils. So I really like them. End up being really important in Rebels. They're just a great visual, right? If you have no idea what the purrgils are, you're just like, oh, I get it. When it's the weird blue cone there in hyperspace, got it. I remember that. When it's the weird blue paper mache, whatever, they're in hyperspace. Yeah. What the bleep are those? It's still powerful, I think, and invites. I think the value in this episode is Grogu is eyes open, looking at the galaxy, wanting to know, wanting to understand, wanting to engage. And at first, when he just sees something kind of big and mysterious, like he kind of reaches out towards it. Of like, what is that? And then as more and more of them come, and we pull back to that shot where the N1 is so dwarfed by them, he gets a little scared and needs to go to Daddy's lap. And it's so relatable, right? Because this is any of our journey on a new and frightening adventure, right? When you're like, I have my eyes open. I'm ready for a new adventure. Look at that beautiful thing. Okay, now I'm scared. That it's so about Grogu's journey. So if they were never in canon before and they were a total mystery, they'd be kind of beautiful in this moment for me.
Yeah, and I much like you're talking about the music earlier. I don't know how intentional this was, but it definitely works for me. Seeing again the building of a Mandalorian helmet. And seeing again hyperspace and these magical whales, this just organic to the core, this whole concept, it is a connection for me as a fan who it's not a bad way to look at it, but I never once in 1983 went, do you think they copied birds or whales on this when we yells punch at Chewie? No, nor would you. Boba Fett did. I don't think some some very traditionally based armor just hammered the hell out of Sebeskar into that, and it's this beautiful ceremony. He probably went down to the armor store and got it, and so I love that we can go reevaluate some of the core themes of Star Wars and just what we knew and what we thought we understood about Star Wars and explore it in a different way. That's I think a lot of the driving focus of our shows here. And I hope that works for folks because again, I get it. I'm a space whale guy, right? Hashtag why and to actually stop and analyze the why of it, not like what's going on here, to analyze what does it mean. I love that scene. I love that shot beautifully. Dean Cundy doing the cinematography here, legend, of course, returning to, he's done some work here before for Star Wars. Just a beautiful scene, and the VFX crews, everyone there. I think it's one of my favorite shots in a long time on Star Wars. And to your point, it's like a chihuahua in a rainstorm. I want to go outside. Oh no, that's too much for me, Dad. Deal with that. I've been dealing with that 3-4 days. So, and yes, we call Francis our chihuahua, our little baby Grogu. So, everything about it. So happy to see it.
Yeah, I relate to the chihuahuas as well. I had to go out in the rain, and I was not happy about it. So if that's all it is, that's great. But there's also that little. This episode didn't spend as much time on Grogu's abilities. He seemed more confident. We'll talk about some of his Force use. But there was also that question of, is anybody who would awake see them, or were they curious about Grogu? Were they drawn to him? We might never see them again in the Mandoverse, but they did factor into the end of Rebels. Not going to spoil it if people haven't seen it. So it is a possibility of setting them up in live action for an important role later in the season, or an important role in Ahsoka, or Grogu being able to make a connection with them. I'm open to all those possibilities, but if not, it's also just a beautiful moment that works for this episode.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, I would have loved the conversation of David around the table going, well, John, we can put these whales in. What are you talking about?
We got whales? Okay, cool.
I only watched the big episodes of Rebels with Sabine and the Darksaber. By the way, I saw a wonderful interview. There was all these interviews going out. There was a moment where someone was talking about things, and John was like, well, I think it's Sabine's an example of that. And Dave was like, well, maybe not. But I just love that John is full on board, from sitting in that panel in 2019 going, I don't know, I don't really like the prequels, but Dave's trying to work on me, to N1 Starfighter being there, to now we're going the other way with Denzel and all the stuff. Like I loved it. And I loved it. Just loved that connection and the powerful why behind it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We don't necessarily need to talk about the why of this next one, but we should talk about the canon of it. We've talked about the why before. You can dig it up. The fate of Cara Dune. I think this was something that people were wondering about. Lucasfilm had made the statement that the actor is not currently contracted for any future work with us. That was a statement that was made years ago at this point. And I think there was that question of whether it would be acknowledged, particularly since Mando was going back to Navarro. Mando often went to Cara Dune for help. And we get this quote that her absence is kind of a problem for Navarro, for Grief Karga, because they don't have a marshal. We learn that after she brought in Moff Gideon to the New Republic, she was recruited by Special Forces. How did you feel about it being acknowledged? How did you feel about the acknowledgement of it? Did it all work for you?
It did, and you could make some Poochie jokes and went home to her planet and all that stuff, and
she couldn't because it's Alderaan.
It's Alderaan, yeah. You could go that way, I'll tell you what, I just kind of went to myself, right? But I like the choice. Number one, I think you have to, out of respect to the character. Let's leave the performer aside, the character, in case you want to recast the character. Maybe you want to approach it another way. I don't know. Or maybe a human being learns that this, belief in your right to say whatever you want, even if it destroys and hurts other people. Maybe it's a wrong way and they change. I don't know. Star Wars is big, but I'll just say I like it, and I like that the character is alive and perhaps even thriving. Because I do like the character. The character was good for me, and the story there and the potential there. So it leaves it open, but also it's just fair, and it worked really well for me, as well as being somewhat funny. I can get behind some of the jokes or gifts or something that I'm sure are going to come rolling out, but they took it head on in the best way they could.
Yeah, no, I mean, a meme of that that famous joke from Simpsons with the quickly inserted cell.
Mhm.
It being replaced instead of went back to his home planet. Poochie was recruited by special forces.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny to me. It's an acknowledgement of the tension between fiction and how much we know that the story behind the fiction in our modern world. But in terms of just like, let's look at in the world of Star Wars and the story of Mandalorian, I loved it. I love that they acknowledged it because it would be weird for Din to be back there and not really ask. It sets up a great tension of Grief needing someone to fill that role. But also, it's a great arc for the character of Cara Dune that matches the arc that she was on and matches the theme of this episode of change. We meet her of trying to kick Din off of Sorgan because she needs a place to hide out. And she's staked this because she's wanted by the New Republic. She crossed some lines in her anger and need for vendetta about Alderaan is the way that I always took that. And then she kind of opens up enough to be, okay, I'll be part of this Outer Rim community. And then Carson Teva gives her that real, like, but you have the ability to make a difference. You have these strengths to be a part of something larger. And she accepts being a marshal, not just of Navarro, but of the New Republic, a deputy, right, of the New Republic. So it continues that path of growth of like, oh, wow, I was wrong that I'm done with this world. I made a difference. I helped bring in this horrific war criminal. I still have a purpose. She's answering Carson Teva's call on a larger scale.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Awesome. All right. Well, then we can move on to some other stuff. Obviously, just Navarro is a city of riches. I'm not going to name every Star Wars alien we see, but I do want to celebrate the Quakian monkey lizard tree. Great to see the COO series cook droid. They built one for Book of Boba Fett, so we get to have one here.
Yeah, bring it over.
But more than anything, the Anzellans, of course, Babu Frick, introduced in Rise of Skywalker. Even people who are pretty down on that film would often say that they enjoyed Babu Frick. The Anzellans, once again, voiced by Shirley Henderson. A big Anzellan scene. Let's talk Anzellans, Ken. How did you feel about all that?
Oh, I was waiting for it. From the reveal at Star Wars Celebration, and safe to say, I'm not calling it. It's what did I put down here? I put it down as Other Frick. Yeah, that's right, other real original Ken, but not Babu, but Other Frick for me. I loved it, and even from the moment he points at IG-11, I was like, oh, we're gonna get him. This is the episode. Going right to him. From the design of the little door, the comedy. Maybe some of it doesn't work for everyone, and maybe there's good reasons for it. But I don't know. I just love it. From Bad Baby. I'm going to be saying that for a bit. I loved everything about it, and fun use of Star Wars lore.
Yeah, no, I really agreed. I was so glad that it was Shirley Henderson. I really liked that vibe that like you go into, a car garage, and the people there have, they're there to help you and you're paying them, but they also have their culture and their thing that's on TV and their jokes and their thing they're talking to you about. And I just kind of like that they've got this culture, this vibe that's really fun and really interesting. And I liked that it wasn't that it evolved from Babu Frick. I love that they had the small door.
Yeah, it wonderfully silly, right? It just, but we wouldn't want any other way. Yeah, and the fact that the whole scene was some fun comedy we'll talk about, but yeah,
absolutely,
the design was great.
Yeah. We'll get back to the Anzellans more when we talk about comedy. But a couple other canon things. Kalevala, the planet that Din finds Bo-Katan on, is the canonical homeworld of Satine from the Clone Wars animated series and House Kryze. It was first mentioned in the Clone Wars animated series, so it is a established animated canon. I really liked the design of the Mandalorian castle. I kind of thought like some of the beams and the architecture outside echoed the hilt of the darksaber, and all of it. It was very reminiscent of the throne room on Sundari, and different Mandalorian architecture. So, any thoughts about that?
I was amused by that's a Mandalorian castle. Like how many other there's Fortress Vader in this? I don't know a lot of other castles in Star Wars, but no, I love that. No, and I love it was there's a great shot talking about just how the technology and all this continues to improve. There's a great shot when he's flying in. It just looks so real. No other ways to describe it. Of the N1 flying in through the rain, through the clouds, heading towards the castle. It was a great little Star Wars moment.
Yeah, and just for me, it's that beautiful, delicious Star Wars genre stew of we go from pirates to a sci-fi castle. It's just great. So yeah, I was really excited by it. Excited to remember that it was connected to Clone Wars, and hoping for more House Kryze and Satine connections as we go on. Yeah. Last thing for me is. I didn't do a deep dive on all of the various symbols on the flags that the Children of the Watch were holding, but one of the flags did have what looked like the Boba Fett F from his sigil on his chest armor. That sigil in Legends was Jaster Muriel's sigil, and the sigil is unidentified in modern canon. But just seeing the F, I was like, is that the F for Foundling?
Yeah. Foundling flag, yeah.
The Foundling flag. I didn't know. So nothing more to say about that other than fun speculation. I look forward to other people with more knowledge and more time doing deeper dives on some of those Mandalorian flag symbols. Did you have any other canon thoughts?
No, I think that was pretty good. I know. Well, a lot of people are talking about it, a Legends connection, but the pirate ship is similar design. I mean, almost you could say it is the design of the Eclipse from Legends, the big Emperor Star Destroyer ship. So, which an Aftermath, you have some connection there too, if I remember. So, yeah, but I love it. I love it as a callback to something a lot of people know. But it's just a great design. So, happy to see it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. More galactic galaxy building. Let's move on then to action. Did you have some favorite action moments in these big set pieces?
Mando's return and talk about the timeline. Fun again, going to, is this a flashback? What are we seeing? If you stop and think about it again, it's Wesley Kimmel playing the young kid. You wouldn't necessarily want him cast as a young Pedro. So that's the reality of it. But you're not necessarily thinking about it in that time, right? You're just kind of like, what are we watching? What are we watching? Are we back in time? Because again, it's no longer just Paz and the armor. We got a whole clan around it. So the return, the explosion, the ship, the flying off down to the little pop reveal, which is almost comedy. I thought it was just a great big introduction, great beat, full of action, and a really tense scene. Grace was watching it with very gripped up, just water, not waters that are for everything, and the big creature and everything about it. It was a great opening sequence. I love that. But Mando's return, that big beat, the music cue, wonderfully done.
Yeah, it was just a great set piece, and I agree. Like I like water. I generally like pools more than actually dipping my head under deep water. You said a thing I didn't mean to. But yeah, being entirely encased in armor and going underwater seems not great. But I really did like that. It felt like actual high stakes for these Mandalorians. I love the armor just grabbing the child, the interruption of the ceremony, and just no question about it, grabbing the child and trying to throw it to safety. Yeah. A bunch of great individual beats, but my favorite was the beast tail slapping the random Mando into a cliff.
Pain.
It was, in the caption of "man screaming" as he flew into a cliff. Great stuff. I also really did love the disturbing zombie IG-11 with the Terminate asset. Obviously, I say zombie IG-11, but really had some Terminator vibes, right? Of like, I only have one limb left, but I'm still fighting. How'd you feel about that little action beat?
Yeah, I loved it. Also, I think maybe it's because I just Phil Tippett's on my brain with that recent Poker Face episode, but it had a little stop motion-y vibe. So and he's done some work before, so I wonder if the song will be revealed. I just love it. It was its own little horror one-act play right there, right?
Yeah.
This killer torso going around.
You're right. It did have a little bit of a stop motion vibe, which was really great. And
Mhm.
I am not a huge fan of the line that's using your head. That one's maybe not for me, and that's fine. But I did like the droid using the ego statue.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Oh, I love that Grief had a statue of him, like a bust, just sitting there. Like, of course you would, Grief. Love you, love you. Yeah, the line was, it was a choice.
Yeah, it was a choice. It was a choice. Any other action moments for you? Did you like the bigger space battle, the asteroid chase?
I did. I did. And a couple things about that. And this is, again, going back to my journey with the show and even to Chicago 2019 when they showed unfinished footage of Manda, right? It was our first tease. And even Favreau on stage going, yeah, we got a lot of work to do. Let's get back to it. I've always, some of the stuff in space on this show has not clicked for me as much as other things, right? I don't know. The ships don't look as right. I can't put my finger on it. Just doesn't feel right. Not so here. I love that sequence. I thought it was really good. Put together again. The Eclipse-like ship helped as well, but the dogfight was in space was really good for me and worked. And the N1's just looking great. It is just fun to have the N1 there. And I was going to ask, can we say the sound of the N1 starting up is that an action beat? That sports car that gets going there. I just love everything about it. But the N1 is just looking great on camera.
It was so great to just spend time with the N1 and just the energy, right? It contributes to the new energy. It is the meaning of the thing, of something old that has become new again, and Din embracing new things. But it just looks and sounds great. I wrote that down under anything that we haven't talked about because I wanted to be sure to mention. I love that hot rod rumble as he was starting it up on Navarro. So great.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think some individual shots of ships in space in Mandalorian have looked great. But there's that kind of small little dogfight at the beginning of Chapter 5, Season 1. That it looks fine. This looked great, and this looked like we're going to show you what we can do now.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people who kind of miss seeing some of those dogfight stuff. It hasn't been in Star Wars as often for being such a central part of the original trilogy in particular, and great stuff in the prequels as well.
Yeah.
But I really liked the meaning of it, of like, okay, well, Din was doing what was right and helping out a friend, and now he's got this other problem.
Yeah.
So it was great to see, but what I liked about it was the storytelling of it. And my favorite shot in it is them losing track of Din, and then an explosion behind an asteroid. You know that Din has turned the tables. Rick Famuyiwa, I think, is a fan of that kind of action and telling a story in the action. But it really just it evokes what Rick Famuyiwa did with Din in the season 1 episode, The Prisoner, right? Of
totally
making him kind of scary, right?
Yep.
Making you think like, oh, he's kind of in danger. Oh no. And it goes back to early stuff that the armorer said of like to be a Mandalorian is to be both hunter and prey. Like people will always be after you, and you're going to be a hunter or prey in a situation, and you should be the hunter if you can. And the number of times that we watch Din start out being the prey and turn around and become the hunter, and it's cool and scary. And I thought that was really well done in this action scene.
That's a great point. I'm bringing back that line. Love it.
Excellent. Well, then let's move on to some comedy, some whimsy, any grizzled weirdos moments. Classic discussion for us here on the Mandalorian Report about grizzled weirdos. What did you like in this episode for the fun stuff?
Yeah, I got to start with those cape droids, man. It's I didn't see that coming. I don't wear a lot of capes and flowing robes, but I think that would work. And I just loved it and seemed rather practical as well. Like you heard the real good job in the clunk. Maybe it was just the sound design, but I loved it. Yeah, it was just, and it just fit. Grief is such a wonderful character from meeting him, and he's a little more on the scoundrel side, but still just the Mendo of it all. Baby, wave your hand to the magic thing, all the stuff. I just love him and love having Carl Weathers in Star Wars. And it just, it's a perfect evolution of this character. Bigger and bigger robes, so big, the droid's got to help me.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And yeah, he's always got that side of his personality. He's holding court in the cantina, right? He's saying things, the things that he wants to be loud, so everybody hears them, right? So he's always got this sense of presentation, right? Even that weird hollow message he gives
Yeah.
to Din in season 1, laying everything out, is really like this speech in front of people.
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of had the same joke of like, it's funny that his robes are bigger in season 2, and this is just making it so clear of like, yeah, no, that wasn't like a whoops that the audience caught. That's who he is, and we're doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
And if Navarro keeps getting more successful, he will have a combination of a cloak that is also his house, and his head will just be sticking out of it. Like we're going bigger on purpose, and the droids to carry his cloak train like he is an oldie timey bride is hilarious. Just the absolute artifice of it, right?
Yeah, and he's not always nice about everything. He's got he's some ego invested, like you said. I loved it. Like he's a little bit of I think people love him and they rally around him, but he's something, man. He's a character.
Yeah, he is absolutely great. And I'm glad that we got some quality time with him, and in the promise of more. Going back to a beat you mentioned is almost being comedy. I thought it was definitely comedy. You got the meaning and the depth and the high stakes of the Children of the Watch ritual, the beast attack, the tension, and then the fist pumping Din's back moment, and then all of it with this button of Grogu popping up. And if it was just Grogu popping up, it would be fun and fine. But I love Grogu popping up to this group of Mandalorians like, hey, everybody, it's me, the guy who kind of effed up your life in lots of ways. How's it going? I'm back, you know.
Loved it. Just we're 3 years into this, right, or so, including Book of Boba Fett stuff. I'm not tired of Grogu stuff. I don't know if I hope I never am, but it's just the spin and share, the stuff we saw in that clip they released, the space M&M, all the stuff, but just every reaction is so wonderful for me.
Yeah. And what I really, really enjoyed about the chair spin, because I hadn't really picked up on it in the trailer, is that there's that tiny cue of that rushing air noise of the Force. He's using the Force to spin that chair.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's great to me too, because like, as always, respect different opinions, but that was one of the big talking points that original trilogy fans had about how the prequels were ruining Star Wars. Of the Force used to be majestic, you use it to call the blade to your hand, and now like Obi-Wan's using it because he's too lazy to close a door.
right.
And I just kind of like that tension of like, it is a majestic power, but also it can be used to spin a chair because Daddy's having a boring conversation about land rights
and job offers. Yeah.
So I love that. I also love the I'm curious to see how much it will play out, but the ongoing beat of people being uninterested or unimpressed by Grogu's name.
I love
because
it.
When Pelly finds out, she's like, I'm not calling you that. And then this grief beat. You like this grief beat?
I really did. I had kind of forgot about the Pelly one until I completed my rewatch just last night of all the Boba Fett episodes. I love it. I just his name is Grogu. If you say so.
What? Oh, if you say so. Just entirely disinterested in it. Whatever. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. Obviously, ton of great comedy with the Anzellans, but what moments or lines spoke to you?
The communication gap worked for me on both sides. If I don't understand, you speak Huttese, but also Grief translating when he doesn't need to. Just everything about it worked. And I liked having, again, what I'm calling other frick, being able to speak a little bit of basic. With Babu, we got a little bit of it too, to be clear. Memory go blank. But like, I don't know. I like that. This is kind of leader of the pack, and I can speak to the customer. And I just, the beat of it it worked for me. The big hug, I'm sure we'll mention Grogu hugging him, was just wonderful. It's joy. I like a little joy in my Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I do like their style of language, the no squeezy and deboken, to just communicate that IG-11 is broken. But I think I most enjoyed their attitude and the comedy of their attitude, right? Of, in theory, they're a business, right?
Yeah.
And I love the shot when Din realizes that the door is down there and looks down. He's got this little shirtless Anzellan going, "What do you want?
What do you want? What do you want?"
And then the line where Din is saying, "But I want this one. He's my friend." And the lead Anzellan says, "He's not a friend anymore."
Yeah.
And then you just hear all of them laugh, right? That's that moment of it's kind of cruel, but that's that moment of community, right? Of
Yeah.
like, well, it might be your favorite car, but it's not going to be anymore because it doesn't run,
It's a little Office Space energy. Not going to work here anymore.
Yeah. So I loved all that stuff.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the squeeze, the child Grogu hugging. How'd you feel about that?
I mean, come on. That's what you wanted. Give us what we want. Grogu hugging cute things. Like, let's do it. I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it too, because I think we have that line from Din saying, "I'm sorry, he's young." It's like Grogu is growing a lot, but that's kind of a clear stamp of like, he is still a toddler, right? And it's an evolution in that he didn't try to eat them.
Yeah.
But he wants to play with them. And it's just a fun beat on like this little guy going through the galaxy. Everybody is always looking down at him and patting his head and cooing about how, cute he is. And like here he finally sees somebody smaller than him.
Yeah. All this made me think, though, I do want Macaroon Kid back.
Oh, yeah.
An update to the story. Like maybe he and Grogu share macaroons.
Oh, that'd be great. And we can, settle the time argument by seeing how old that kid is.
How old he is. He's a 45-year-old male. Yeah.
You took my macaroons and you ruined me, kid.
Back in the day.
Any other moments of comedy or whimsy?
I think that was about it. Here's what I noted. So we talked about the IG-11 returning and the action side of it. And I think even though in the back of my head, I probably knew the Anzellans were on their way to do something with IG-11. I thought it played really well. Beautiful music, the magic, the hand, and your buddy IG-11's back. Only he's going to try to kill Grogu. I thought all that kind of worked well.
Yeah, no, it really did work. From like, the beauty of the possibility of rebirth to the horror is a great switch. Mm-hmm. Is there anything in this premiere that we haven't talked about that you wanted to address?
No, I think we hit it all pretty good here. It's good to have him back. Big Star Wars night, the Bad Batch stuff. Our review coming out on that as well. So it's a lot of fun out there, in this episode delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing for me is I really, really like the change that has happened with Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder, who do so much of the work of physically being the Mandalorian, along with Din Djarin. That had been a shift where they brought Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder out at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, and everybody made a big deal of like Pedro Pascal saying the three of us do this, right? Mm-hmm. So to see them bumped up from the very small credits to the main credits, I thought that was great.
No, it's great, and the performers are actors, but they're also they're stunt performers, which is often a group in Hollywood that doesn't get the respect and support. And I think they've been good. Even Book of Boba Fett was all the way through a lot of stunt performers and on camera speaking roles and all stuff. Like, it's been fun. So I loved it and well deserved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we head toward wrapping up, you have not watched the season 2 streamer, right?
I have not, and you choose
episode 2. Sorry.
Yeah, you can choose not to believe me, but you can ask my mom. Every year for Christmas, up until the time I moved out of my house, she about 3 days before Christmas, 3 or 4 days, would be like, "Hey, you want to open up some gifts?" And I'd be like, "Nah, wait for Christmas morning." I swear to you. That's me. I am not watching it. It's going to expire soon, by the very small window on those two screeners. So I'm going to have some lunch and not watch them. So I don't know what's coming next.
Yeah, I am going to stay strong. I'm inspired. I enjoyed this first episode so much, and it did leave me wanting more in a good way. So it was really hard not to, at 12:45 at night, hit the button. But I'm not gonna. Yeah. So since we don't know what happens in the next episode, do you have any predictions or hopes for next week or the rest of the season?
I wonder if he's going to keep, at what point does he just go straight there, right? He's a different part of his life. And who else, not anyone we've met or who else along the way could he decide to take with him? It seems like he's not ready to go to Mandalore until he has a droid to help him. So that could be kind of where we're going. Obviously, we know where we're headed. It's just a matter of how soon. And then, again, we got our new pirate king, Gorian Shard, who I definitely want to see more of. Only to see the green kelpie moss beard shaking rage. They're not done. That whole thing's not done. So again, It's a matter of time, and we'll see. But I think we're ready to kick it up a notch, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm curious if there'll be any amount of, hey, I need this other person or this other provision. I thought there was a little ambiguity of like, he says that he'll get the memory chip, and then I believe Grief says something along like, if anybody can find it, the Anzellans can. So I was a little unclear how much his next mission is, get the memory chip, but that could be a classic. Hey, I need you to do this job for me to give you this memory chip. But what I really hope, and I'd be really intrigued by, this episode did touch on Grogu, did touch on his Force use, but it felt like real table setting for what is absolutely at stake with Din. I'd be really interested if the second episode did a little bit of table setting for Grogu, of seeing a little bit more of his skills advanced and understanding his perspective and his challenge a little bit more.
Yeah, that could work. I love that.
All right, we are going to wrap up as we always do with a hopefully fun question. Ken, what action figure or merch would you want inspired by this episode of The Mandalorian?
I think I do want a figure of Grief in his full cape glory with the droids, but I think I'd like someone out there to get inspired by this and actually build the cape droids. Then I'd have good reason to buy a cape.
Oh, what do you think are the possibilities of Star Wars Celebration having some cape droids?
Oh yeah, you got to get building fast. You got to get building fast if you're going to do it. But I think those cosplayers can pull that off.
Oh, I think so. I was inspired for two bits of merch. One, I don't know, there's just some vibe about the Anzellans all hanging out. I want a painting of them. Maybe just playing a game in the style of dogs playing poker. It just seems like they would fit into that kind of painting.
Yeah, I'll take that. That's great.
And then, of course, always need action figures. I really hope that we do get a deluxe action figure of Sweatpants Energy Bo-Katan with bummed out throne. I would love that.
Yeah, one of those real gentle, giant, detailed ones. Just that you don't even need to move Bo-Katan. It's just that's what it is. That would put that above your TV. It captures the energy.
Yeah, the vintage and the Black Series, figures are beloved by people who really want lots of articulation, so they can, pose the characters in action poses. And I love the idea of a really well articulated Bo-Katan figure, so you can drape her legs over the throne there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
In that depressed way she is sitting. All right, that is our big look at this first episode of season 3. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, here's where you can find us. You can find us on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Hive Social if you're there at Force Center. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is Force Center Podcast, and we're on YouTube. Hey, we're enjoying a lot of you jumping over there with us, subscribing. We have episodes, figure fights, essays. We got shorts, a lot of things heading over there. So head on over there to YouTube if you would like. Merch is available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You can find the podcast in a lot of different spots, including Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Just search, you'll find us. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. From there, if you want to discuss Mando more with some great Force Center friends, get into our Discord via our Patreon page. Follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com. Joseph, where can they find you? And what are we doing out there in London? Do we know?
Yeah, what are we doing? Well, you can find me on all the social media is at Joseph Scrimshaw. And while you're checking out the Force Center YouTube, you can check out my YouTube channel. Got a lot of comedy and short films and more coming there. But for us, we have a mini announcement. We are going to be in Star Wars Celebration in London, and the ticket link is coming soon. But we wanted to give people a heads up and an announcement that Ken and I are doing a stand-up comedy show in London. We'll be doing some pop culture influence material because that's who we are. But it is also both our just general stand-up sets as well as some other fun and game coming to be announced. That show is going to be on Sunday, April 9th in London. Sunday, April 9th. Ticket link coming very soon if you're interested in that. Anything else to say about that one, Ken?
I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun to be live in London with all of you. So more details coming and where you can get the tickets, like Joseph said. But see you there.
Yep, coming soon. See you there. But that is it for this episode. So for myself, for Ken, for Grief Karga's Cape Cloak Droids, this has been the Mandalorian Report.